Reckless bikers versus trained K9, a surprising showdown. It was a quiet evening in the small town, a perfect night for a patrol. The streets were empty, the wind calm, and only the distant hum of city lights filled the air. But as the darkness stretched over the town, something unexpected began to stir. What started as a peaceful watch soon turned into a battle of survival, and the story of loyalty and bravery would unfold in a way no one could ever have imagined. The K9, Max, a sleek German shepherd with a glossy coat and eyes filled with purpose, paced alongside his handler, Officer Daniels. The calm of the night contrasted with the alertness of Max's every step. There was a rhythm to their patrol, a quiet understanding between them that ran deeper than words. Max was not just any police dog. He was Daniel's closest companion, his partner in crime fighting, his confidant, his protector. The distant hum of motorcycles suddenly broke the stillness, cutting through the quiet like a sharp knife. Max's ears pricked up, his nose twitching. Something wasn't right. Officer Daniels gave Max a reassuring glance, his hand brushing the K9's fur. "Stay sharp, boy," he whispered, knowing that Max's instincts were always ahead of his own. Max turned his head slightly, meeting his handler's eyes, the trust between them evident in the silent exchange. Daniels could almost feel the connection. Max would always protect him, and in turn, Daniels would always be there for Max. But tonight, the bond would be tested in ways neither of them had imagined. The sound of roaring engines grew louder as several motorcycles appeared on the horizon. They were reckless, weaving in and out of traffic, disturbing the peace of the neighborhood. Max stiffened beside Daniels, his body tense, muscles coiled, ready for whatever was about to unfold. From the corner of his eye, Daniels spotted the group of bikers. Their aggressive maneuvers were not just dangerous, they were deliberate. They were testing the limits, and the sight sent a jolt of unease through his chest. Max growled low in his throat, a deep rumble that vibrated against the pavement. It was as if he could sense the danger long before it was visible. As the bikers neared, one of them revved his engine, the roar almost deafening. They sped up, the sound of their engines blending with the rhythm of Max's heavy breathing. The leader of the group, a tall man with tattoos covering his arms, noticed Max immediately. He revved his engine even louder, daring the K9 to react. "What's this? A dog trying to play cop?" the biker taunted, a mocking grin spreading across his face. Max's stance remained unwavering, but the tension in the air thickened. Daniels could feel his heart rate pick up. This wasn't just a show of bravado. This could escalate quickly. Officer Daniels stepped forward, his hand resting on the leash. "This is your warning. Stop now, or you'll regret it," he called out. His voice steady but firm. But the biker leader only laughed and revved the engine again. The roar was deafening. Max's body trembled, not with fear, but with the instinct to protect. Daniels knew this was a tipping point. One wrong move, and the situation would spiral. Max's eyes locked onto the biker, his body poised like a spring ready to snap. His instinct screamed at him to charge, to stop the threat before it escalated. But Daniels held the leash tightly, his voice now a mere whisper. "Easy, Max. We wait." Max's tail flicked nervously, his muscles tensing and releasing as if struggling to obey. The K9's loyalty to his handler was fierce, but the situation was pushing him to the brink. In a split second, the biker leader made a move. He revved the engine again, and with a twist of his wrist he sped toward Daniels, challenging him. Max's instincts took over before Daniels could even react. In one swift motion, the K9 broke free from the handler's control, leaping into the air with speed and precision. The biker veered off course, but it was too late. Max had already closed the distance, knocking the biker off his motorcycle and onto the asphalt. The other bikers hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to intervene or flee. The night had turned into chaos in the blink of an eye. Max stood over the biker, his teeth bared in warning, the gleam of danger in his eyes. Officer Daniels rushed forward, his voice firm as he called Max off. "Max, down!" he commanded. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The bikers, realizing they were no longer in control, slowly backed away. The leader groaned, scrambling to his feet, but there was no more bravado left in him. The night had changed. Max's loyalty had been tested, and in the end, it had been more than enough to protect his handler. As the bikers retreated into the night, Daniels crouched down next to Max, his hand on the K9's head. "You did good, boy," he whispered, the bond between them stronger than ever. The quiet night had been shattered, but the bond between man and dog remained unbreakable. The bikers circled, their engines roaring like wild beasts eager to hunt. Max stood at his handler's side, his fur bristling under the weight of the tension in the air. Officer Daniels's grip on the leash tightened, his jaw clenched as he scanned the group of reckless riders. The leader, a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, revved his engine and shouted over the noise, "What's a dog gonna do, huh? You think he can stop us?" Max's ears flattened against his head. The taunts were no longer playful, they were a challenge. The atmosphere shifted, thickening with danger. Daniel's heart raced, but he kept his voice steady. "Back off now." But the biker only laughed louder, speeding forward with a defiant growl. The others followed, revving their engines in unison. They were provoking Max, pushing him to his limits. And they didn't realize it, but they were also pushing Daniels. Max's eyes narrowed as he watched the biker leader veer dangerously close to them. His instincts screamed at him to act, to chase, to stop the threat before it escalated. His muscles twitched, his body vibrating with the urge to spring into action. The K9 had been trained for this. He knew the steps, the signals, the protocols. But in this moment he wasn't thinking about training. He was thinking about protecting his handler, protecting Daniels. Daniels could feel the tension in the leash, the way Max's body stiffened beneath his touch. "Easy, Max," he whispered, though he wasn't sure he believed the words himself. His mind raced with conflicting thoughts. Should he let Max go? Or should he maintain control? Could he risk the chaos that would follow? Max's sharp gaze remained locked on the biker, but he didn't move. Not yet. His loyalty to Daniels was stronger than his instinct to attack. He waited, controlled, but just barely. The bikers encircled them now, their engines loud and threatening. They were taunting Max, revving their engines again and again, getting closer and closer. Each pass was like a deliberate challenge, a test of who would break first. The leader rode in circles, the wheels of his bike spinning as he slowly closed the distance. The roar of the engines drowned out everything else, but still, Max stood his ground. Daniels could feel his heart pounding in his chest. He knew this was the breaking point. If the bikers didn't back off, things would escalate. Max's restraint was incredible, but even the most disciplined animal could only take so much. One of the bikers leaned down, shouting with a smirk, "Come on, dog, do something. You think you can take us on?" Max growled, a deep, rumbling sound that vibrated through the ground beneath him. His teeth flashed, and his tail was rigid, like a tightly wound spring ready to snap. But still, he waited for Daniel's command. Still, he trusted him to make the right decision. Without warning, the biker leader made a sharp, reckless turn toward Daniels, gunning the engine to full throttle. It was the challenge Max had been waiting for, only it wasn't the kind he'd hoped for. In a heartbeat, Max lunged forward, breaking free of Daniel's hold. The leash snapped taut, but the K9 was already in motion, leaping with incredible speed toward the biker. The biker was taken off guard, his bike tipping as Max knocked into him, sending both the rider and the motorcycle crashing to the ground. The sound of the crash was deafening, but Max didn't stop. He stood over the fallen man, teeth bared, body tense. His instinct had taken over, and there was no turning back. Daniels rushed forward, shouting, "Max, down! Down!" His voice was a mix of fear and authority, but Max was beyond commands now. The situation had gone from tense to dangerous in a blink. Daniels reached Max, just as the K9's snarl echoed in the night. The biker leader was still on the ground, but now others were beginning to circle. This has gone too far, Daniels thought, his heart pounding. The situation was spiraling. If he didn't regain control, the bikers would retaliate, and it wouldn't just be Max they'd go after. "Max, stop!" Daniels commanded again, this time louder. He pulled on the leash, but Max didn't budge. His eyes locked onto the fallen biker, his growl deepening. There was no fear in Max's eyes, just the fierce desire to protect. Daniels made a split-second decision. He had to get the situation under control, but could he do it without putting Max or himself in further danger? Max stood firm, but now Daniels was the one who had to decide. He looked down at his partner, his friend, and saw the fire in his eyes, the sheer will to protect. Max wasn't just a tool, he was family. But Daniels couldn't let him act on his own. Not here, not like this. The bikers were closing in, and Daniels knew there was only one way to stop it. He crouched beside Max, placing a hand on his head, feeling the powerful rhythmic thrum of the canine's heart beneath his palm. "Max, I trust you," Daniels said, his voice filled with raw emotion. Max's ears perked at the words, his tension easing, but just for a moment. This was it. Daniels needed him to trust him now, to let go of the instinct and return to the training that had always kept them safe. Before Daniels could act further, one of the bikers revved his engine and sped toward them again, this time at full force. The leader, now back on his feet, joined in, their bikes forming a menacing circle around Daniels and Max. It wasn't just a physical threat anymore, it was a fight for survival. "Get ready, Max," Daniels whispered, his hand tightening. On the leash. Max's muscles tensed, but his eyes never left his handler. This was the moment that would define everything, the trust, the loyalty, the bond between them. In an instant, the leader of the bikers swung his fist, aiming for Daniels. Max didn't hesitate. With lightning speed, he lunged, his teeth sinking into the biker's arm, pulling him away from Daniels. The force of the canine's bite was enough to send the biker sprawling backward. The fight momentarily halted. Max stood over the downed biker, panting heavily, but there was no aggression left in him. He had protected his handler. He had passed the ultimate test. The bikers hesitated, some of them backing away, others standing frozen in shock. Daniels quickly pulled Max back, his voice trembling but firm. "It's over," he said, his eyes never leaving the group of bikers. As the tension slowly began to dissipate, Daniels knew this moment would change everything for him and Max. Their bond had been tested in ways neither could have imagined, but in the end, it was their trust in each other that had kept them safe. The tension in the air was palpable, thick with the promise of violence. Max stood at his handler's side, his fur bristling, muscles coiled like a spring ready to snap. Officer Daniels had been trying to keep the situation under control, but the bikers had pushed him to the edge. The noise of their engines drowned out everything else, the revving a constant reminder that they wouldn't back down. Then, without warning, the leader of the bikers gunned the engine, sending his bike roaring toward them. "You think you can control us?" he shouted, speeding toward Daniels with a dangerous gleam in his eye. Max's body went rigid. His instincts screamed at him to protect his handler. He could feel the weight of Daniels' hand on the leash, steady, but even he knew there was no stopping what was about to unfold. In that moment, everything changed. The bikers closed in, surrounding them, their faces twisted with mocking smiles. The laughter rang in Max's ears, but he couldn't focus on that now. The only thing that mattered was protecting the person who had always been there for him, his handler. Max's heart pounded in his chest. His instincts were pulling him in one direction, to charge, to attack, to protect, but something else tugged at him. Fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of what might happen if he didn't control himself. He wasn't just an animal, he was a partner, a friend, and his bond with Daniels was everything. He glanced up at his handler, their eyes meeting for a split second. Daniels' expression was calm, but there was something else there. A quiet urgency. "Max," he whispered, "stay with me." Max's eyes flickered back to the bikers, their grins growing wider. The leader revved his engine, daring Max to make a move. But Max hesitated, torn between his duty and the fear of the consequences. His breathing was heavy, the tension in his body evident. Every part of him wanted to lunge at the bikers, to stop the threat before it escalated. But he couldn't do it. Not yet. The bikers didn't wait for Max to decide. One of them made the first move, speeding forward on his bike, aiming straight for Daniels. Max's instincts flared. He couldn't stand by any longer. "Max!" Daniels shouted, but it was too late. The K9 lunged forward, the leash snapping out of Daniels' hand as he surged toward the biker with lightning speed. His teeth were bared, his growl deafening as he collided with the rider. The impact sent the biker flying off his bike, crashing to the ground with a thud. But the chaos didn't end there. The other bikers, seeing their companion on the ground, roared in anger, charging toward Daniels and Max. The tension in the air grew thick with the smell of gasoline and fear. Max stood over the fallen biker, his fur bristling, ready for the next move. But the real danger was still coming. Daniels's heart raced as he ran to Max's side, his eyes scanning the approaching bikers. There was no way out of this now. The situation had escalated from bad to worse in an instant, and Max was at the center of it all. "Max, stop!" Daniels shouted, but his voice was barely audible over the noise. Max's eyes were locked on the approaching bikers, his body tense and ready for the next attack. But Daniels knew this was the moment that would define everything. Max could still hold back, or he could give in to his instincts completely. Time seemed to slow as Daniels made the split-second decision. He reached for Max's collar, pulling him back away from the chaos. But just as he did, one of the bikers swung a bat toward him, and in that moment, Max acted on pure instinct. Max leapt forward, his powerful body slamming into the biker with such force that the bat flew from the man's hands. The biker was sent crashing to the ground, and Max stood over him, snarling. His jaw was locked, and his eyes were wild with the need to protect. Daniels barely had time to react as the bikers began to retreat. Max had taken control. He had made his decision, and it was clear. There was no turning back now. The power in his actions was undeniable. The remaining bikers hesitated, seeing their comrade on the ground, and the fight quickly lost its momentum. The leader of the bikers looked from Max to Daniels, his face twisted in disbelief. "You've got a damn monster on a leash," he muttered, backing away slowly. Max didn't move. He was still, his gaze fixed on the retreating bikers, but there was no more aggression in his stance. He had done what needed to be done, but now he was waiting for Daniels to take the lead. Daniels knelt beside Max, his breath coming in heavy gasps. The fight was over, but the toll it had taken on both of them was evident. Max's fur was ruffled, his chest rising and falling rapidly as he caught his breath. But Daniels could see it in his eyes. Max had made a choice. He had sacrificed control for his handler's safety. "Good boy, Max," Daniels whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He knew the weight of what had just happened. Max hadn't just fought for him. He had fought for their bond, for the trust that had been built over years of partnership. Max's tail gave a slight wag, but his gaze never left the retreating bikers. They had won this round, but it wasn't over. The bond between them was stronger than ever, and Max's loyalty had been tested in ways that most could never understand. As the bikers disappeared into the distance, Daniels and Max stood in the silence that followed the storm. The night felt oddly still, as if the world was holding its breath. Daniels placed a hand on Max's back, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "We did it, Max," Daniels said, though his words were filled with an underlying sadness. The fight had been won, but at what cost? The danger they had faced wasn't over, and neither was the emotional toll it had taken on both of them. Max nuzzled his handler's hand, his eyes calm now, as if he understood that the battle was far from finished. But for now they had each other, and that was enough. Daniels stood up, looking around the quiet street. The echoes of the fight still hung in the air, and the adrenaline had yet to wear off. But as he looked down at Max, he realized that this moment, this test of loyalty and trust, would stay with them forever. Max's eyes met his, and for a brief moment everything else faded away. The bond they shared was unspoken, yet deeper than words could ever convey. It wasn't just about the fight. It was about the trust they had built, the sacrifices made, and the loyalty that had been tested in the heat of battle. As they turned and walked back toward the squad car, the night sky above them felt a little quieter, a little safer. They had faced chaos and come out on the other side, stronger together, and that would be a memory neither would ever forget. The night air was still, heavy with the lingering scent of gasoline and sweat. Max stood by Daniel's side, the pair of them looking out at the empty street. The bikers were gone, their roar fading into the distance, leaving behind only the sound of the wind and the occasional distant siren. Max's body was tired, his fur matted with dust and dirt. But there was something in his eyes, something that told Daniels they had made it through the storm, that they had come out the other side, together. Daniels patted his K9 side, his touch gentle but firm, as if confirming that they were both still standing. "It's over," Daniels murmured, his voice a mix of exhaustion and relief. But deep down, he knew it wasn't truly over. There would be more challenges, more tests, but for now they had made it through this one. Max's head was lowered, his eyes focused on the ground. His usual bright gaze had dimmed, the weight of the night's events pressing down on him. He had fought hard, and now it was time to process what had happened. Daniels watched him, knowing that the battle wasn't just physical. It had affected both of them, mentally, emotionally. He could see it in Max's posture. The K9 wasn't just a trained animal. He was a companion, a partner who had fought for the same cause as his handler. "Hey, buddy," Daniels said softly, kneeling beside Max. "You did good tonight. You saved us." Max's ears twitched at the sound of his voice, but he didn't respond. Daniels knew that words couldn't fix the weight they both carried. The scars of battle weren't just on their bodies, they were etched into their souls. "Come." "On, let's head back," Daniels said, standing up and guiding Max toward the car. The long road ahead of them would be tough, but they would face it together, as they always had. The bikers had fled, but they hadn't escaped justice. The city's officers had been quick to respond, chasing them down and bringing them to justice. Daniels knew that the law would take its course, but in his heart he couldn't shake the feeling that the bikers had been just one piece of a larger puzzle. The reckless behavior, the threats, it was all too familiar. Max sat by his side in the squad car, his head resting on his paws. He seemed calm, but Daniels could feel the tension in his K9 partner. The danger wasn't over, and he knew that even as the bikers were arrested, there would always be more threats. But tonight, justice had been served, and for now, that was enough. As they arrived back at the station, Daniels could feel the weight of the night lifting, but there was something more, a moment of recognition. Max had done more than just follow orders. He had acted on instinct, on loyalty, on a bond that went beyond the physical. Daniels walked into the station with Max beside him, and the officers who had witnessed the confrontation gave them nods of respect. There were no words needed. Max had proven his worth in the heat of battle, and everyone knew it. One of the officers, a veteran handler named Johnson, looked at Max with a proud smile. "That dog's a hero," he said, patting Max on the head. Max gave him a quiet wag of his tail, but his eyes never strayed from Daniels. His loyalty was unwavering. As Daniels sat down at his desk, his hand running through his hair, he felt a deep weariness settle over him. It wasn't just the physical toll of the night, it was the emotional strain. He had made decisions in the heat of battle, decisions that could have changed everything. But Max had been there with him, trusting him every step of the way. Daniels thought back to the moment when he had ordered Max to hold back, when he had tried to control the situation instead of letting Max act on his own instincts. It was a choice that still haunted him. He wondered if he had made the right call. "Next time," Daniels muttered to himself, "I'll trust you more, Max. I won't hold you back." Max was lying at his feet, his eyes soft and understanding, as though he already knew what Daniels was thinking. The bond between them was unspoken, but it was real, and it had carried them through the hardest moments of the night. The emotional toll of the battle weighed heavily on both of them. Daniels had seen the fierceness in Max's eyes, the raw energy that had driven him to act without hesitation. But there had also been moments of hesitation, moments where Max had held back, waiting for Daniels to make the right call. Daniels rubbed Max's ears, the act comforting both of them. He realized that Max wasn't just a tool to be used. He was a living, breathing partner who had a heart, a soul, and a deep understanding of the world around him. The loyalty they shared wasn't something that could be taken for granted. It was a rare gift, one that Daniels would never take lightly again. As Daniels looked at Max, he knew one thing for sure. Their bond had grown stronger, deeper. They had faced danger together, fought side by side, and come out the other side victorious. The road ahead would be tough, but Daniels knew that no matter what came their way, they would face it together. "Whatever happens, we've got each other," Daniels whispered to Max, his voice filled with conviction. Max's tail wagged, a small but meaningful gesture that spoke volumes. They were ready for whatever challenges the future would bring. Together, there was no limit to what they could overcome. The night may have been over, but the memory of their battle would stay, with them forever. It would be a story told and retold, a testament to the loyalty, bravery, and bond between a handler and his K9. The lessons learned that night about trust, sacrifice, and the power of loyalty would shape their future in ways they could never have imagined. As they walked into the night, the city around them felt a little safer, a little quieter. The story of Max and Daniels, their unbreakable bond, would never be forgotten. And that was the way it was meant to be.